Just remember, Emma, you were skiing, my mother whispered, ripping my hospital bed rail. One wrong turn, that's all it was. Her knuckles were white, matching the sterile walls of my pre-op room. My father stood by the window, his face hard as stone, while my brother Marcus paced nervously in the corner. The pain in my side was excruciating, but it wasn't from any skiing accident. Less than 6 hours ago, Marcus had pushed me down our basement stairs during one of his infamous rage episodes. The difference this time? I landed badly, my internal injuries severe enough to require emergency surgery. Mom, the doctors will know. I managed through gritted teeth. The injuries don't match. They'll match if you say they match. My father cut in sharply. Your brother is 3 months away from starting his residency at Johns Hopkins. We're not letting one little accident ruin his medical career. Little accident, that's what they always called Marcus's outbursts. When he broke my wrist in 8th grade, it was a playful sibling roughhouse. When he pushed me into our glass coffee table last year, leaving me with 20 stitches, it was a momentary loss of balance. I was always expected to lie, to protect, to keep our family's perfect image intact. Marcus was the golden child, the future doctor, the one who could do no wrong. I was just the younger sister who needed to understand that family came first. A young nurse entered, checking my vitals. Dr. Chen will be in shortly to discuss the procedure, she said, her eyes lingering on my face. I saw something in her expression. Concern, maybe recognition. This wasn't her first time seeing injuries that didn't quite match the story. As soon as she left, Marcus approached my bed. Emma, please, his voice cracked, showing real fear for the first time. I didn't mean to. You know how I get sometimes. I'm getting help, seeing that therapist Dad found. Just, please. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. At 26, he was everything my parents had dreamed of. Tall, handsome, brilliant, with a bright future in medicine ahead of him. But I also saw the darkness that lurked beneath, the uncontrolled anger that had made me its target for years. The door opened again, and Dr. Chen walked in, her face serious as she reviewed my chart. Miss Sullivan, I'm concerned about the nature of your injuries. They're inconsistent with a skiing accident. My mother stepped forward smoothly. Emma's always been clumsy, doctor. She hit several trees on her way down. It was quite the tumble. Dr. Chen's eyes met mine, and I saw something there, understanding, compassion, and determination. I'd like to speak with Emma alone for a moment, please. Absolutely not, my father started, but Dr. Chen cut him off. It's hospital policy in cases like this. Please wait outside. I watched my family file out, each face wearing a different mask of worry. As the door closed, Dr. Chen pulled up a chair beside my bed. Emma, I'm going to be direct with you. Your injuries indicate a fall from height, with impact patterns suggesting stairs, not a skiing slope. Additionally, your medical history shows multiple emergency room visits over the past decade, all with various explanations that don't quite add up. My heart raced. This was different from the other times. Usually, our family doctor handled everything, maintaining our secrets with quiet efficiency. But he was out of town, and my injuries were too severe to wait. I can't, I started, but Dr. Chen held up her hand. Before you continue that skiing story, you should know that hospital security cameras caught your arrival. Your brother carried you in, and we have footage of him admitting to the ER nurse that you fell down the stairs at home. My breath caught. Marcus's panic when we arrived must have made him forget the practiced lies, just for a moment. One slip, after years of careful cover-ups. The surgery you need is serious, Emma. You have internal bleeding that needs to be addressed immediately, but I'm also mandated to report suspected abuse. Your brother's medical career isn't worth your life. Tears filled my eyes. For the first time, someone was seeing through the carefully constructed facade my family had built. Someone was putting my safety first. If I tell the truth, I whispered, they'll never forgive me. Dr. Chen took my hand, her grip firm and reassuring. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is stop protecting those who hurt us. Your brother needs help, real help, not cover-ups. And you need to be safe. As the anesthesia team began preparing for my surgery, I made a decision that would change everything. I told Dr. Chen the truth, all of it. Years of documented injuries suddenly had real explanations. Years of silence finally found a voice. The last thing I saw before the anesthesia took hold was Dr. Chen making a phone call. Her words clear and purposeful. I need to report a case of suspected domestic abuse, and I need to contact the medical board. The week after my surgery passed in a blur of pain medication, hushed arguments outside my hospital room, and a parade of unfamiliar faces asking questions. My parents tried to maintain control, but things were different now. Hospital security stood outside my door, and visitors had to be approved, a precaution Dr. Chen had insisted on after my mother's third attempt to correct my statement. Marcus wasn't allowed in the hospital at all. A restraining order had been issued, something that sent my father into a rage. "Your own brother," he'd shouted before security escorted him out. "How could you do this to your own brother?" But it was the quieter moments that really showed me how much had changed. Social workers came, showing me patterns I'd been trained not to see. They laid out photos of my previous injuries, medical reports spanning years, creating a timeline of abuse that made me feel sick to my stomach. "Your brother's residency program has been notified," Linda, my assigned victim advocate, told me one afternoon. She was a gentle woman with kind eyes who brought me crossword puzzles and sat with me when the anxiety got too bad. "The medical board is launching a full investigation." Will they revoke his acceptance?" I asked, surprised to find I still cared. "That's not your concern, Emma," Linda said firmly. "Your job right now is to focus on healing and accepting that none of this was your fault." My phone had been buzzing constantly with messages from extended family. Aunt Sarah, who'd always turned a blind eye to Marcus's temper, now demanded I stop this nonsense and think about the family's reputation. Uncle Pete, a hospital administrator in Boston, offered to smooth things over if I would just recant my statement. But there was one message that hit differently. It came from my cousin Kate, who I hadn't seen since she moved across the country 3 years ago. I always knew something was wrong, but they made me feel crazy for worrying. "I'm so sorry I didn't help you then. You're the bravest person I know." Dr. Chen visited regularly, checking my recovery and offering quiet encouragement. "The medical board investigator contacted me today," she said during one visit. "They're particularly interested in how your family's doctor handled previous incidents." I thought about Dr. Harrison, our family physician who had treated me since childhood. How many times had he written vague descriptions in my chart, accepting the flimsy explanations my parents provided? How many opportunities to help me had he ignored? The investigation was expanding beyond Marcus now, reaching into years of institutional failure. Each new revelation seemed to shock everyone except me. I'd lived it after all. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Morris, the chief of surgery, came to my room. He looked uncomfortable, clearing his throat several times before speaking. "Miss Sullivan, I owe you an apology," he began. 10 months ago, you came to our ER with a concussion. I was the attending physician and I accepted your family's explanation without questioning it. I failed you. I remembered that night. Marcus had thrown a textbook at my head during a study session. The cover story had been that I'd walked into a door while texting. "It's not your fault," I said automatically, then caught myself. Linda had been working with me on this, my instinct to comfort others, to take responsibility for their failings. "It is partly," Dr. Morris insisted. "We're supposed to be advocates for our patients. The medical board's investigation is making us look hard at how we handle cases like yours. Changes are being made." That night, alone in my hospital room, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. Pictures of family vacations, holiday gatherings, Marcus's medical school graduation, all of them showing smiling faces and perfect poses. Each image held a hidden story now, a memory of what happened just before or after the camera clicked. There was Marcus at Christmas, grinning with his arm around me, hours after he'd slammed my fingers in the car door for embarrassing him in front of his girlfriend. There was Mom straightening my collar at Easter, whispering that if I'd just try harder not to upset my brother, these things wouldn't happen. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. It was the night nurse, coming to check my vitals. "Your mother's downstairs again," she mentioned casually. Security turned her away. What did she want? "Same as yesterday, trying to bring you papers to sign. Something about withdrawing your statement." I closed my eyes, exhausted by the constant pressure. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't facing it alone. The hospital staff, the social workers, Dr. Chen, they had created a protective barrier between me and my family's manipulation. "The medical board investigator is coming tomorrow," the nurse added, adjusting my IV. Dr. Chen wanted you to have time to prepare. I nodded, touching the still tender surgical scar on my side. This wound would heal cleanly, properly, under the care of people who actually wanted to help me recover. Unlike all the others that had been hidden, minimized, and swept under the rug of family loyalty, tomorrow would bring more questions, more revelations, more attempts by my family to regain control. But tonight, in this quiet room with its security guard outside and its caring staff checking on me, I felt something unfamiliar growing stronger. Safety. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt safe. 6 months after my surgery, I sat in a conference room at the State Medical Board, sharing my story one final time. The investigation had grown far beyond Marcus, exposing a pattern of institutional negligence that spanned multiple hospitals and medical practices. Dr. Harrison, our family physician, had his license suspended. 3 other doctors who had treated me over the years faced disciplinary action for failing to report obvious signs of abuse. But the biggest shock came from Marcus's medical school records. There were incidents during his clinical rotations, the board investigator explained, laying out documents. Aggressive behavior toward nurses, inappropriate reactions to stress, complaints from patients' families. All quietly handled, all buried under glowing recommendations from supervisors who knew your family. I wasn't surprised. Marcus had always been protected, his outbursts excused, his path smoothed by our parents' influence and money. But now, sitting in this sterile conference room, I watched that carefully constructed shield crumble. The medical board's decision was unanimous. Marcus' residency acceptance was revoked, and he was barred from practicing medicine in our state. More significantly, the report would follow him anywhere he tried to restart his medical career. My parents hadn't spoken to me since I refused to recant my statement. Instead, they'd thrown their energy into damage control, hiring expensive lawyers and PR firms to manage the fallout. But some things couldn't be managed away. Your testimony helped identify 7 other cases of covered-up medical abuse. Linda told me after the hearing. 7 other families who finally have answers about suspicious injuries and incomplete records. I thought about those 7 others, wondering if they too had been told that family loyalty meant silence, that protecting someone else's future was worth sacrificing their own safety. My new apartment overlooked a small park, as different from our family's sprawling estate as possible. Kate had helped me find it, insisting on paying the security deposit despite my protests. Consider it back payment for all the times I should have helped, she'd said. The morning after the medical board's decision, I was surprised to find Aunt Sarah at my door. She looked older, tired, nothing like the polished society woman who had once told me to stop being so sensitive about Marcus's behavior. I've been going through old photos, she said, holding out a worn album. Looking for signs, for moments when I should have seen what was happening. They're everywhere, aren't they? Once you know what to look for. We sat on my small couch, flipping through pages of family history. There I was at 10, wearing long sleeves in summer to hide bruises. Marcus at 16, his face contorted with rage in the background of a birthday party photo while everyone smiled for the camera. Your mother called yesterday, Aunt Sarah said quietly. She wanted me to talk to you about dropping the whole thing. Said it wasn't too late to fix this, to get Marcus back into medicine. And what did you say? I told her I was done fixing things that shouldn't be fixed. The changes rippled outward. Uncle Pete resigned from his hospital administration position after internal investigations revealed his role in concealing similar cases. 2 of Marcus's former supervisors lost their positions for failing to report his concerning behavior during rotations. Dr. Chen kept in touch, becoming something of a mentor as I started taking psychology classes at the local college. Sometimes, she told me over coffee, it takes one person standing up to show others they can stand too. Marcus himself had moved across the country, last I heard. He was working in pharmaceutical sales, ironically the career path our parents had once dismissed as beneath him. The restraining order remained in effect, but sometimes I wondered if he found the help he really needed, now that his facade of perfection had been stripped away. My mother's last attempt at contact came in the form of a letter, delivered by her lawyer. It was filled with the usual manipulation, family obligation, the importance of forgiveness, the suggestion that I was being selfish and dramatic. At the bottom, she'd written, everything we did was to protect this family. I wrote back one line, everything I did was to protect myself. The nightmares still came sometimes, memories of falls and impacts and the sound of my brother's anger. But now I had tools to handle them. Therapy, medication when needed, and a support system built on truth rather than secrets. 1 year to the day after my emergency surgery, I returned to the hospital. Not as a patient, but as a volunteer with a new program Dr. Chen had started, helping identify and support victims of family violence. Standing in the ER where I'd once been carried and bleeding, where one doctor's refusal to accept lies had changed everything, I felt the weight of what had been lost and what had been gained. My family's perfect image was shattered, but in its place was something real. My brother's medical career was over, but maybe that had saved future patients from someone who should never have had power over others' well-being. My parents' influence had crumbled, but I was standing straight and strong. Sometimes protection means breaking what was never whole to begin with. Sometimes healing hurts more than the original wound. But as I pinned on my volunteer badge, ready to help others find their voice, I knew that every painful step had been worth it. The truth had cost me a family, but it had given me myself.